All these resources that have not come to us, now you want to overly compensate for people who never lived here before, and we need to be taken care of first and foremost before anything else happens here.
Why would any leader put our black communities already riddled with crime at further risk by placing unvetted non-taxpayers steps away from our seniors, our children, and our homes we've worked so hard on our own to secure?
I'm going to start this again. I'm not playing the entire thing. It's from End Wokeness Twitter handle. I don't know the context of the video, but quite clearly it's local residents who are angry at the consequences or policies of their government. I just need to highlight two things, and then we're going to move on to today's show.
All these resources that have not come to us, now you want to overly compensate for people who never lived here before, and we need to be taken care of first and foremost before anything else happens here.
We need to be taken care of first and foremost before anything else happens here. We, the citizens, the tax-paying citizens, we, the citizens, deserve to be taken care of first and foremost. That almost sounds like an iteration of America First, that wildly offensive, self-centered policy, Make America Great Again, America First. It almost sounds like that's exactly what she's describing. We are the citizens that the government is supposed to take care of, not, and we're going to get into the second question here, unvetted non-taxpayers. Did you hear the word that guy used?
Why would any leader put our black communities already riddled with crime at further risk by placing unvetted non-taxpayers steps away from our seniors?
Unvetted non-taxpayers. I'm no mathematician. That sounds like Orwellian newspeak for illegal immigrants. Like people want to say the same thing. They want to believe the same thoughts, but they want to believe that their thoughts and what they are saying is morally righteous, morally superior. And so they create these terms to turn what they consider to be offensive language into virtuous language. What was it? Non-vetted. No, it was unvetted non-taxpayers. That's because the individual feels morally better saying that than illegal immigrants. You know, gender-affirming care, people feel better saying than genital mutilation. Control the language, and you can control thought itself. That's the intro, because we're getting into an interview which is all about controlling language. Today's schedule, we have two interviews. One with Sarah Choujounian, who's a nurse out of Ontario, who is now feeling the brunt of the politicized, weaponized, professional licensure body of Canada, much like Jordan Peterson and others. And then we're going to have Robert Kraychik, who's a Rebel News reporter, who's attending, from what I understand, every day of the Tamara Lich and Chris Barber trial in Canada. So it's a Canadian-centric stream today. But Americans might want to pay attention as to what's going on north of the border, because it's going to trickle down. It's going to trickle down fast and hard. Now, let me see what's going on here. Rumbles as well as locals offline. Hold on, let me see here. It looks, sometimes you have to refresh. So I'm refreshing. No, we're live on Rumble, and I can see myself there. Going to go to locals, and everyone's saying locals works. So for those of you who are new to the channel, Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned Rumbler, although now I live in Florida. I bought a surfboard today. It was a $200 6-foot soft top board. Recommendation of Jessica Rose, who I interviewed a couple of weeks ago for the second time. And then I go to the ocean and the waves are non-existent. So I'm going to try to get into surfing. I'm told it's good for meditation, spirituality, balance, core strength, etc. But I picked up a beginner's board, and we'll see how it works. What was I saying? Two guests today. For those of you who don't know, I start on YouTube and Rumble, Viva Frei on Rumble. And then after about 15 minutes, we end on YouTube and go over to Rumble. And we're simultaneously streaming on Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, for an amazing community where everyone is above average. And we're going to have an amazing show today. If anybody wants to support the channel, look, Rumble rants on Rumble are great. Super chats on YouTube. YouTube takes 30% of it. Some people don't like that. You can go join our community as a supporter. $7 a month, $70 a year if you want to. Or you can just become a member. And there's 120,000 non-paying, non-supporting members in our above average community on locals, or because we've nailed it with this most recent merch. Look, there's also non-Trump related stuff if you want to get some merch, but you can go to Viva Frei and get some of the best merch you can possibly imagine. You got your above average shirt, above average hat, wanted for president, this shirt, politics ruins everything. It's all there. VivaFrei.com. You all know how to do it. Okay. Sarah has been sitting in the backdrop, patiently waiting to tell her story to the world, because I don't think people know what is going on in Canada or the degree to which the madness has not yet reached peak depths, but we're getting there. I'll let Sarah explain who she is, but I say, like, if I'm late to hear about a story and I'm living on Twitter and I'm living on the interwebs, if I'm late to the story, that means a lot of people out there who probably would care if they knew about it don't know about it to care. So we're going to try to remedy that today. All right, Sarah, I'm bringing you in. You ready? 3, 2, 1, and we in. Sarah, how goes the battle?
Oh boy, it's a battle. It's going.
I know half of the answer to that question. Sarah Choujounian, and now we were talking beforehand. I was watching some of your other interviews, and I know that you mentioned it's an Armenian last name on Jason Levine's interview. I knew that, and then one of the things that I learned from an Armenian friend back when I was a kid is that apparently Armenians in diaspora spell their last name with IAN, whereas Armenians in Armenia who are not native but live there spell it with a YAN in terms of the last name, and the IAN means son of, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what you said. I didn't know. I didn't know. So,
well, I love last names. I love the etymology and origins of last names. Okay, Sarah, for those who don't know who you are, we're going to get into the depths of the story, but 30,000-foot overview before we start talking about the trials and tribulations that you're facing in Commie Canada.
So you want me to tell you a little bit about the story of how I spoke out?
Well, let's say it's elevator pitch, and then we get into the details.
Oh, okay. I don't know about elevator. I have a lot of elevator pitch as I go, but I've been a nurse since 2004, and I worked in a nursing home for the greater part of my career. And, when you work in a nursing home, the government doesn't care about these people. So when they said that they were shutting down the entire economy to protect my residents that got half of the money for food allowance a day as prisoners do, a huge red flag went up in my head. And I don't know how much details you want me to go into, but I was actually the first, if not one of the first, but one of the first active nurse to speak at a rally here in Canada. And I founded Nurses Against Lockdowns, which was to unite nurses and bring the ethics back into healthcare. And it kind of merged into Canadian Frontline Nurses. And that's another story of its own. So I'm going to keep it separate today. So I spoke out October 2020. And we were also the nurses who went to Washington, D.C. on January 6th with 4 nurses from the United States, which you might know, Erin Marie and Nicole Siratek were 2 of them. And we came back here, and I had already been fired from my first job. I was actually chief steward at my job. And I was known to be one of the popular nurses with families and residents. But
and we're going to get into that, because one of my questions is, had you had a clean record prior to the charges that you're now facing? But let's back it up all the way. Okay. I won't ask your age, but I'm going to surmise it. How long you've been a nurse since 2004? You're a mother of 3?
Yes. Single mom, yeah.
Single mom of 3. Born and raised in Canada?
Montreal.
All right. That's very nice. What neighborhood or what municipality?
Actually, Westmount and St. Henry. Different, actually all over the place. But I grew up as a child in Westmount, so good area.
Okay, I'm from Westmount as well. Did you know that?
No.
I used to live on Green Avenue. I mean, you live on Green Avenue. I was born, like, I did the lower Westmount, but we were born in middle Westmount, not upper Westmount. Although Westmount is, it's a very, very affluent municipality. It's a nice municipality. But yeah, born and raised in Westmount. Actually,
so weird.
That's amazing. And now you're in Ontario?
Yes, I live in Toronto, Brampton, Toronto.
So born and raised in Canada. Parents?
My mom is born in Montreal. No, actually, close to Montreal. And my dad is born in Lebanon, Armenian from Lebanon.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, what do you study and how do you end up in nursing? Because it's a very interesting thing, like people who decide to go into nursing, but how did you end up in that career path?
Well, actually, oh boy, it's a really long story. I was married to someone who was 15 years older than me, who wanted me to be an accountant. I didn't even know what an accountant was, but it was definitely not for me. And I kind of fell out of it. He was deported. Long story. Like my stories is like so much going on. But I always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to help people. And the university where I was going in accounting told me to take a year off. So I actually went and did the personal support worker. And I just loved it. I was so good at it. It was like, I have a lot of trauma in my life, and I didn't feel very worthy. But I was really good. I finished the PSW and I went for nursing right away. It added value to my life. And I honestly, nursing saved my life. I felt like I wasn't important. I have a lot of drinking in my past and drugs. And, it slowly started my journey into, becoming someone who was in a better place. So nursing put value onto me. I loved it. I still love it. It's just what I do. I love to help people.
Now, not everybody gets to say, my ex was deported, and even I know the limits to the questions that I will ask. But when you mentioned trauma, because you mentioned it in the interview that you did with Jason Levine as well, and
yes,
we talked for a few seconds before, and I said, I'll ask just so people understand context, but I'm not going to pry too much. Prior trauma, is it of physical violence, psychological abuse, and how did that sort of influence the decision to get into nursing and healthcare?
Well, I come from a dysfunctional family. I mean, don't we all these days? No. But there was emotional, some physical abuse, but the abuse that affected me most was sexual abuse, and it was in the family. And it happened, when you go through that kind of abuse, you're at risk for it to happen again and again. So it happened several times in my life. My parents weren't very attentive. So I was on the streets alone a lot. I grew up there a lot. And so I got into a lot of trouble, addictions and all that. And when I was 17, I met this 32-year-old who paid attention to me. And so I got pregnant, and he didn't have papers. And he said that, if I don't get papers, I'm going to leave. Do you want to marry me? And I was like, yes, I'm going to save him and he's going to love me. And so I did all that. And obviously he didn't have papers. So that's where that comes in. But yeah, the trauma kept following me, because when you don't fix the problems that are in your childhood, the patterns continue, because you try to fix that wound, but you try to fix it through others that are similar to the people that have abused you. And that's not how it works. You got to go do the work and heal yourself first. So it kept happening. Like my life kept, going through these cycles of being re-abused and re-abused. And when I entered, so I felt like I wasn't doing much with my life, honestly. And when I did the PSW, the personal support worker, right before the nursing, I just loved it so much. It just put value onto my life. I was excited. It's something I'm passionate about. So that's why I decided to do nursing. And I just loved it. I've graduated with honors. Like the teacher was always like, not Sarah, let someone else do it,
It's interesting. I forget who it was that said it. I want to say Dr. Drew, because I'm not sure how many people I listened to where they said, it's not 5 or 10 dysfunctional or abusive relationships. It's one that reiterates or manifests over time until you can actually nip it in the butt. Okay, interesting. Fantastic. Well, I say fantastic. It's interesting to know the genesis story. What we're going to do is I'm going to end this on YouTube now, because we're going to get into stuff that YouTube and your professional order. You can't even say the things that have turned out to be true 2 years later without getting into trouble. And also, YouTube doesn't deserve us. So we're ending on YouTube. Come on over to the Rumble. The link is there. Doesn't change anything from our Aunt Sarah. But everyone, mosey on over, and we'll carry this on over there.